Welcome to the first module for the Swyx Online training, and this is a prerequisite for anyone attending the Swyx Ware Authorisation course, the short version. Let's quickly go through the sections of this particular module, and we're going to start off with a quick introduction to the company, who Swyx are, where we are, look at the major components that make up Swyx Ware, the architecture and protocols used, various real-world applications, how we've deployed Swyx around Europe, and finally in this module an overview and a discussion about the licensing for the on-premise solution, the customer premise. So let's start off by talking about Swyx and who are we. That's our new office, the one we moved into at the beginning of 2017. We make IP communication software based on Windows servers. So far there are more than 16,000 medium-sized companies using Swyx. We concentrate most of our business in the SME marketplace, and yes, we do have customers with 2,000 plus extensions, but the majority of our users are in the SME market. That's the sub 500 user section, starting as low as 10-15 users all the way up. Our software is market leading. We've been around quite a while now and still have one of the best UC soft solutions available. Around Europe and as far as America and New Zealand, there are over 1,000 certified resellers selling our product and maintaining it and providing solutions to customers. And we also supply an OEM version for customers like Deutsche Telekom, who brand the product under the T-Systems brand and sell it in Germany as their product. We were founded way back in 1999, and our headquarters is based in Dortmund. We have additional offices both in the UK, in London, and in France. And we currently employ 180 users. We expanded fairly significantly when we moved at the beginning of this year. So we're up to 180 users now. Our distribution partners and resellers are predominantly based in Europe, where we have presence in just about every European country. But we do have authorized partners both in New Zealand, the United Arab Emirates, and even the United States, but predominantly a European-based company. So let's look at the core product and the components that make up Swyx. Now you will see on some of these slides in the top right hand side this information bubble with a KB article. This is the knowledge base articles that are available via our partner net, and you can log on, and if you see this on any of the slides, you can go to PartnerNet and look up for more detailed information about some of this. So start off with Swyx Server. This is a 64-bit Windows operating system, so that's Windows 2008 R2 or above, and with our upcoming version 11 release of Swyx, we will also be supporting officially Windows Server 2016. Very easy to administer, no special database management tool. It's all done with a standard Microsoft Management Console. Can be maintained either and programmed either from the server console itself or via any Windows workstation that has the right privileges and access rights to the system. We support multiple servers, and you can grow the system and have multiple sites connected or multiple servers in one very large organization. More about that in the scenarios coming up shortly. And of course multiple sites, ideal for head offices and branch offices. Again, we'll cover that in more detail when we get on to the application scenarios shortly. Our connection to the outside world to make telephone calls is either via ISDN, for those that want a legacy connection, or SIP trunks. If we're talking ISDN, then the product or the module used is Swyx Gate. If we're talking to SIP trunks, then the connection is the Swyx Link Manager. And Swyx Link Manager is also responsible for maintaining the links between multi-site Swyx servers. If we go in ISDN, we can support multiple gateways. So we have our own ISDN card, and you can install that on the server, or you can install it in a standalone barebone Windows workstation machine and use that as your gateway to the outside world. We do have, for those that require them, hardware appliances as well that can be used for gateways. And this can be installed again, as I said, on the server or any Windows 7 or above operating system, both 32 and 64-bit for the gateway. Our ISDN card, we have several versions of it. We support both ISDN 2 and ISDN 30. The ISDN 2 is actually a quad card, and so it supports 4 simultaneous ISDN 2 trunks. That's 8 channels, and an ISDN 30 full 30 channel card, and there is also a 60 channel version for supporting 2 simultaneous ISDN trunks. This is European ISDN. We don't support the North American flavor. Our ISDN cards will also work both in TE and NT mode, that is terminal equipment and network termination. Easier explained with this short video. And of course, not only do we support multiple servers, we also support multiple gateways. So you can have ISDN gateways in multiple locations or multiple trunks in one location. It's immaterial to us. And of course, if you've got multiple trunks, it is also possible to define which trunks are going to be used for which numbers and by whom and when. So priorities can be defined for each of the trunks. And then we move on to our soft client. Our Windows client is called Swyxit. We also have a Mac client, Swyx for Mac OS X. Talk about that later in the course. This is PC telephony for Windows 7 or above, both 32-bit or 64-bit versions of the clients are available. It also works on the server, of course, and it also works inside terminal server, but again we'll discuss that in more detail when we get onto the training itself. The soft client can be used in its own right as a full soft phone, fully featured soft phone, or it can be used to control another telephony device, be that our own system phones or any third-party phone these days, to be quite honest. The client has a call routing manager available to users if they're given access rights to it. This is based on it looks very similar to the old Microsoft out-of-office assistant. So users can define how they want their inbound calls to be handled, and they can define different rules for different people, play different messages, and it can do all sorts of clever stuff. And it's very easy and intuitive to use. Integrates into Microsoft Outlook out of the box, no additional information required. The integration into Outlook includes name resolution, so if you have a contact and someone calls you, you will see the name in the display of the phones. It can screen pop contact information if you want it to. We integrate into the journal in Outlook. You can dial from any part of Outlook. In fact, you can dial from any application within Swyx. All you have to do is be able to highlight the telephone number, be it an email signature, a Word document, a web page, just highlight a number and press F11 and Swyx can dial it. We integrate into Outlook for presence information as well, so if an appointment comes up, your status will change. We have rich presence in the system, so not only can we see if you're logged on or logged off by the color of the lights, but we can also get activity from your Outlook calendar that shows whether you're in the building, out of the building, etc., etc. Collaboration tools are built into the client, which allow users very easily by simply clicking a button to share their screens and collaborate on the screens with other Swyx users. Call recording, ad hoc call recording, or aide-memoire recording, whatever you want to name it, that's available as a function within the client as instant messaging, video telephony, the ability to control third-party devices with it, TAPI integration for legacy database products, a fully featured suite of communications tools built into a very flexible client that can also be modified. It has a skin technology, so the look and design and feel of the product can be tailored to a specific customer's requirements. If you're using it as a soft phone, we support 3 concurrent simultaneous USB devices. So you can have a USB handset, a headset and a hands-free module all plugged in at the same time. And you can change the audio paths at the click of a button at any time while you're talking. There are a couple of additional modules there. The integration into Outlook, as I said, is out of the box, but if you are a Lotus Notes user, we can do exactly the same thing with Lotus that we do with Microsoft Outlook, but you will need an additional license for that. And you also, for the call recording, there is a small charge for an additional license to do client-side call recording. There is also call recording available via Swyx Gate and Swyx Link, so we can do trunk-side recording or client-side call recording. And then we move on to our system phones. The system phones we currently use are supplied to us via Unify. As I said, Swyx is a software house. We don't make hardware. The Unify handsets are incredibly robust, German engineering, and connect straight into the Ethernet. The best part about our phones, it's a zero-touch provision. You just plug them in and they work. And they support real hot desking. Users can just go up to a phone, put their PIN number in, and the phone will adopt their layout, their identity, and you can move to multiple desks. Each user in Swyx, by the way, and the CPE product, has 4 concurrent logons, so I can log on to 4 different devices simultaneously. Each of the devices can be used independently of one another and simultaneously, but they all have the same identity, of course. The Siemens phones all come with the Unify handsets, the Swyx phones, all come with 2-port switches available in them, and they all come with gigabit variants as well. For those that have PoE, the system phones fully support Power over Ethernet. But if you don't have those, you don't have to upgrade the switches. There is an optional power supply. In fact, the additional power supply for the Siemens phones support 2 phones simultaneously, so you can power 2 phones from one power brick. As I said, the phones are zero-touch implementations. They have a service called Phone Manager running on the Swyx server. And this is responsible not only for configuring the phones, assigning them the logon credentials, etc., but also managing the firmware upgrades should one be made available. Again, there is nothing to do. The phone manager will alert the phones, and the end user will be given the option to accept the recommended upgrade or ignore it. And the phones themselves can be used, fully featured phones. They run all the system features, and they can be used independently as standalone phones, or you can use your screen to actually control the phone. So you can dial out from the screen and the phone will just go off hook and dial the number for you automatically. And don't forget the knowledge base article at the top right hand side of the screen there will give you more information about those modules should you need it. So hardware devices that we have. Full range USB handsets, USB headsets, cordless headsets, hands-free conference USB devices down here, a range of DECT phones, and of course mobile devices. Currently we support both iOS and Android with our mobile client, and it's a true VoIP client with system features, the presence information, a lot of stuff that you see on the desktop you'll see in the mobile client. So the soft client can be tailored and altered to fit the end user's requirement, and the hardware devices, well, these are the devices on our price list, but you can put any SIP device on Swyx at no additional cost and use that as an extension if you so desire. Because as long as it supports the standard SIPs, as long as it supports the SIP standards, then it should work. Of course, there are a lot of third-party SIP devices out there that have a whole wealth of features on them that aren't ratified. They're not SIP standard, they are features of the phone, but again, they will work for the phone, they may not work for the system. But just about every SIP phone out there, if it follows the SIP standards, will be able to be used as a standard extension on the system, and we do not charge a premium for using those devices. So moving on to the architecture and protocols in Swyx. So we start off with our server. The server running Windows, as I said, 64-bit, and it can be virtualized. We support both VMware and Hyper-V on the server, so it doesn't have to be a physical box. Here I've just shown one of our own badged servers that are available through the channel. And for the sake of illustration, I've taken an ISDN card and put it in an external box just to show you the communication path. The server talks to the gateway client using SIP, standard SIP messages. Inside the client there is an ISDN card supplied by us. The one on the screen, the example you see there, is the ISDN2 card. It's a quad ISDN2 circuit, so it supports 8 concurrent channels, 4 circuits, and we talk to the public service telephone network using Euro ISDN. And then we move on to our soft clients. The soft client Swyxit. Call control messages are all done with SIP, but the advanced features, the BLF, busy length field, presence information, things like that. These are web API calls. The system phones, Unify have a protocol called Cornet IP. This encapsulates the full high path feature set, and we support that natively within our product. A user of Unify can take their phone, plug it into Swyx, and it will work exactly the same way as it does on their current system. SIP end user devices. The 3 most common requirements for SIP end user devices are either standard SIP telephones or DECT. We have 3 DECT products in our portfolio. They all work in a fairly similar manner. That is, you create SIP users on the Swyx server, you create the SIP users in the base station, and the base station logs those users on to the server. You then map those IME numbers of the handsets to the appropriate SIP account, and you have DECT. Some of our DECT are fully GAP compatible, and some of them are proprietary. Like I said, 3 products in the DECT portfolio at the moment, and you'll learn more about those in the appropriate modules during the training. And final use for SIP on extensions are these analog adapters, where you want to plug a standard 2-wire device into Swyx. The most common use for this product at the moment will be for a legacy fax machine. Customer's got an old-fashioned fax machine plugged into a telephone line or plugged into an extension port on their old PABX. that can connect via one of these analog adapter boxes, and there are several products in the portfolio starting from 2 ports all the way up to 24 ports. Other uses for this box will be for door entry systems. A lot of older door entry systems are still based on analog extensions on telephone systems. PA systems, tannoy systems in warehouses, a lot of those connect via analog extension ports. Of course, analog telephones, 2-wire telephones, all of those you can connect. The only things you can't connect to this box would be data devices, so PDQ machines, credit card machines in other words, modems, franking machines for postage. These data devices cannot be plugged into these boxes. They need to be connected direct to a telephone line. But anything else, you can connect to those boxes. And then we move on to our other connections to the outside world. So ISDN, that's the old way of doing it, of course. These days, most people are opting for SIP trunks where they got connectivity provided by a internet telephony provider. No need for an external box, media gateway or anything like that. We natively support SIP. We work with SIP, we do interoperability testing with SIP providers in every European country, and there are 3 or 4 of them for each region pre-configured into our system, but you're not limited to using those suppliers. It's software, you have full access and you can create your own profiles and hopefully should be able to connect any SIP trunk onto Swyx without too much difficulty. Not only did we support internet telephony provided SIP trunks, we also support pure internet telephony. This is where you are making a SIP call to a URI. So companies like Vonage, SIPgate and people like that have been doing this for a very long time. It is possible, if I connect one of these trunks onto my Swyx server, that I could type a SIP URI into my soft client and actually make the call straight out without going via a service provider and thereby not incurring any cost. We also support enum. Enum has been around since around 2008. It is a new entry in global DNS servers, and this allows end users to register their telephone numbers, their public telephone numbers, whoever the provider is. Whether it's ISDN or SIP is irrelevant, but if they record their public telephone numbers against a routed public IP address that is set up correctly and points to the Swyx server, then anyone that uses an enum compatible system, when they dial that number, the call will actually go over the internet and be completely free. There will be no call charges, of course, and that possibly is the future of voice communications. And I mentioned it earlier, we have these external gateway boxes, Swyx Connect they're called. This is the smallest of the one, designed for small branch offices. It has its own ISDN and its own VPN capabilities and tunneling capabilities built into it, and you can run a small remote office on a box like that, and they scale all the way up to full ISDN 30 media gateways, ideal for companies that are using virtualization, because you couldn't put the ISDN card in a virtual machine and would prefer to use an appliance rather than a Windows box to connect to the outside world. So again, a complete setup for anyone's requirements. That's the simple one. How we talk and how we communicate internally is quite interesting. It's not prerequisite to understanding and installing Swyx, but it gives you an insight as to what Swyx does. So everything that we do is stored in an SQL database. all our WAV files that are played to the outside world, music on hold, voicemail announcements, IVR announcements, the skins, the graphics, all the binary files, and the call routing code. Everything is stored in SQL. So Swyx needs to talk to SQL, and it does that via our web APIs and to a config data store. This is a .NET service. Previous versions of Swyx, well, when we first started, we used to talk direct to SQL, and then we used various other ways of talking, Windows communication, all sorts of stuff. Today, nice and simple and very robust, very resilient .NET. This is .NET 4, 4 point blah blah. So you do need that on your server. Of course, 2012, 2016, it's there by default, and that talks to SQL. The Swyx administrator, if you're running it on the server, there's no problem. If you're running it on a workstation, as long as the workstation is running Windows 8, Windows 10, then the .NET 4 will be there. If you're not, then you can always download it from Microsoft. So Swyx administration talks direct to SQL via the config data store. Our link manager, our gateway, our connection to the outside world. Of course, that needs to get information from SQL about who the caller is, who they're dialing, etc. That information is stored in SQL, and there's a two-way communication path using .NET. But when it comes to call control, the call control messages are just standard SIP messages. And if you go into our traces, you'll see SIP hold, SIP OK messages, refer messages, etc. Standard SIP call control messages between the gateway and the server are all SIP. The system phones, the Swyx phones, we use that unified protocol called CallNet. So we have a service running on the server called Phone Manager, and Phone Manager will communicate via web APIs to the .NET service and allow the buttons to be programmed, the displays to have the right information on, etc. But when a user wants to hold and transfer a call and things like that, the Phone Manager is using SIP call control messages to and from the server. And then finally, Swyxit. Swyxit, obviously, our soft client needs to get information out of the SQL database, again for buttons and profiles, etc. But when it comes to call control messages like Phone Manager, these call control messages are standard SIP messages. So that's the way the different parts are talking and how we access data. The full map of our current version of Swyx looks something like this. You don't have to learn this inside out, but it's just, again, it's interesting to see the way the various modules talk internally. A couple of things to show you here, though, just to point out. You see a module here for IIS. We don't use IIS with the current version. It's still there. For those that want to use our older version of the mobile client, which wasn't a full SIP client, it did voice over GSM and used IIS for data communications. We don't need that anymore. We have our own signaling, talking direct to the server, but we maintain the web access for legacy customers that don't want to get rid of their old functionality just yet. You will see on the Swyx server a requirement for IMAP and SMTP. This is our voicemail. So send in voicemails. We don't store the voicemails on the Swyx server. They're sent out via SMTP. So if you haven't got a mail server and you do not have SMTP access, you're not going to be able to use voicemail. Users of Office 365, absolutely no problem with this. You can SMTP out through that. It's not a problem. IMAP is only used if you want to recover your voicemail messages via the handset. When we deliver the voicemail as an email, in Outlook we embed a media player and you can just click the voicemail and it plays there and then without having to launch a third-party application. But if you're running another mail client, then you'll see the standard WAV file attachment, and if you double click on it, it will play with your assigned media player. If you don't want to do it via the desktop and you want to do it via the handset, you can press the voicemail button on the phone and the server will do an IMAP query into the mail server and stream your voicemails live from the mail server straight to you. You see a module here for PowerShell. Those that understand PowerShell, we have full PowerShell interfaces where you can create, modify, delete and program the system using PowerShell if you want to do it that way. Visual contacts over here on the client side. The client side has a module called Visual Contacts, which allows you to display data from just about any third-party data source, and it does this via the SDOS meta directory, which is an LDAP connection. That's not an issue, but if you want to connect to data that's stored in the cloud, Salesforce or someone like that, this is not the device you would use, or this is not the application you would use for those sort of connections, because as you see, we need ODBC. Moving up here, support for outside lines, the world of PSTN via ISDN, SIP trunks. For those that support it, and there are very few of them at the moment, there's a TLS service as well for encryption. We also have a TLS connection for running our soft client remotely without creating a VPN. More about that coming up shortly. Like I said, you don't have to understand that, but it is interesting to get an overview of the way Swyx works. What is important to understand though is the difference between signaling and payload, speech. So the next couple of slides are going to deal with that, because there's a couple of gotchas that you need to understand. So in this scenario, we got the Swyx server, we got the ISDN card, just for illustration purposes, running on an external box, but it could be Link Manager running on a separate box. And we have a phone sitting on the LAN, and it wants to talk to someone off-site via a telephone number. So when I pick up my handset down here, I send a message to the Swyx server, and this is a standard SIP message, and the server will send back a message saying play dial tone. The dial tone isn't streamed over the network, it's generated locally. When you dial 9 for an outside line, in the UK 9 for an outside line, the server sends a message to the gateway, confirm that it's there, and will ask the client to change the dial tone from an internal dial tone to an external dial tone. You then dial the telephone number, and the Swyx gate will send that number to the network, and the network gets in touch with the phone at the other end. That phone will return some sort of message. It will be ringing, engaged, faults, whatever. That message is sent through the gateway to the server and to the client, and the client plays the appropriate sound. When the receiving caller picks up his handset, the server then instructs the gateway to send the media directly to the workstation. The media is not going through the Swyx server. It's point to point. Let's look at that internally. Same process. Extension wants to ring another extension. He picks up the handset, the message goes, the dial tone is played. Dial the extension number, the message is sent to the extension, start ringing, put the appropriate messages on the display. When both handsets are picked up, the media path is going point to point. There is no one network interface port on a Swyx installation that is being hammered with all that data, which gives us the scalability. We're not limited to just a couple of hundred extensions that some of our competitors are, because they're having to proxy all the audio and do all the processing via a central unit, and you get quality issues with packet collision and loss and things like that. There is no single network interface on Swyx that is going to be using more than 84K real throughput, and that's on high definition audio. We're only going to be taking 84K on a single network interface. On internal calls, that's just perfect. The speech can be encrypted. We have full support for SRTP if required. So the call is established, and now the server is just waiting for another message, and that message will be I've hung up, and when I've hung up, the call's closed down. Perfect. Let's introduce a VPN cloud for some home workers. So internally everything works as normal. For my home workers, this top user can ring anyone internally can ring him, and so for the bottom user. But now when this user at the top wants to speak to the user at the bottom, the message goes via the server sends the ringing signal, everything's working fine until they've both picked up their handsets, and now you're trying to send media point to point. Now if this was a entry-level VPN product like a Draytech or a Netgear or something like that, this static route will be there. They create them on the fly automatically. The minute you go to a corporate firewall, though, something like a Sonic Wall, Cisco, people like that, at this point there is no path. They don't create them automatically. You have to create them when you set them up. And if you don't create them, there'll be no media. So if ever you get someone saying, I got no media for home workers, that's the first place to look at. Basically, if I can ping a user, I can talk to him. If I can't ping him, the speech is never going to get through. So that's where we were all the way up to 2015 R2, where we released something called the Remote Connector Service. And this negates the need for the soft clients, at least, to have a VPN to connect securely to the server. Built into the client is a TLS service that talks to our remote connector over the internet. So I can have home workers and they send their signal in over the internet to the remote connector. The remote connector sends the signal in back, and now when they start talking, the remote connector server is also proxying the audio. So we don't have to worry about any of this routing problems with home users, and it just connects over the internet without anything. This at the present moment is only available to the soft client. If you want to use a physical phone, whether it's one of our system phones or whether it's a SIP phone, you will have to create a VPN or have some sort of secure network to attach those two. But that's the way we do our media streaming. So application scenarios, how are we going to connect Swyx? Well, obviously head office with some sort of telephone line, and I can have home workers connected via IP. I can have mobile workers, a standard telephone system. Yeah, we can do that. Multi-sited. So this is fairly similar to the Swyx operation, where we have the head office in Dortmund and we got the subsidiary offices in Paris and in London. They're all connected together via VPN. They all work as one system. We get transparency of features. I can see the presence. I can see what people in Germany are doing. We have one global phone book. And if we talk to one another, the calls go over our private network. Actually, if someone in head office in Germany wants to call someone in the UK, the call can go over the VPN, no call charge here, and break out locally on local trunks in the UK. That happens out of the box. It's all pre-configured, and we can have a small branch office that has very limited bandwidth. We can give them the local gateway, so all the audio stays within this local LAN, and the only traffic that's going over the VPN will be data traffic. So I could do this on a DSL without any problem. So multi-sited Swyx. We can also set it up in such a way that if the wide area network is not capable of supporting voice, lack of bandwidth, for example, I can instruct Swyx still to connect all the sites together and get the transparency of presence, features, etc. Except when they go to dial someone's extension or press someone's extension number, the call won't go over the VPN because it can't support voice. It will actually go over the ISDN or the SIP trunks and be a standard telephony call. But you still have all that connection and unified operation of one system across the network. This is a scenario that is quite popular where they have a legacy PABX with a heavy investment in or still under lease or something, and they want to attach Swyx as well. There is an option to use a third-party product like an ISDN multiplexer. My preference in this scenario, though, would be to actually use our ISDN cards to do the same job. So we can take the ISDN in from the service provider into Swyx and feed them straight back out again to the existing PABX. The incumbent supplier doesn't have to get involved in here. The PABX thinks it's still connected to the service provider. We now filter off whatever DDIs we want to use on Swyx. And hey presto, if they want to speak to the outside line, they can. If they want to speak to legacy users, they can, and vice versa. And it gets even better than that, because looking at this picture here, we've got an existing PABX in a branch office. This could be another manufacturer. I could have something like an SDX index with 400 users in one site, and in a branch office I've got a Panasonic phone system. There's no way you're going to connect these two together, but put Swyx front side of both of them and connect them together via Swyx. Now these users can speak to... It's a great migration path. If they've got an investment in an incumbent system, hey presto. They can protect their investment and still get ready with the next generation of Swyx. These are all real world scenarios that are deployed at the moment. So here's one looking at local government, where you have a city hall, very much like any business really, with branch offices, subsidiaries, except these aren't subsidiaries. You've got the Citizens Advice Centre, you've got a depot, a school with a legacy PABX in. They don't want to rewire, they don't want to replace Cat5, they got 2-wire cable in everywhere. You could still put in one of our remote gateways, connect to that PABX, and you still got desk-to-desk communications. And branch offices, home workers, like I said, real world scenarios. Actually, you just ask the customer what they want and Swyx will deliver it. There's just so many ways of deploying it. So finally, in this section of training, we're going to have a quick look at licenses and option packs for the CPE product, the Swyx Ware 2015. So our 2015 server license has 0 cows. Every Swyx system has a server license, 0 cows. And then to that you add Swyx Ware users. A standard Swyx user has all the functionality you expect from a standard PABX. So they get voicemail, unported voicemail on ours. So there's no voicemail blocking or anything like that. CTI integration into system phones. The Swyx system phones integrated out of the box. Outlook integration out of the box. Conferencing, 3-party conferencing, all as standard. Instant messaging, video, it's there. You get that for every user. And then we have a concurrent license model. So you only pay for users that are logged on. If a user isn't logged on, they're not using the license, but all their features work. So their call forwarding works, their voicemail works, everything works, but they're not using the license because they're not logged on. Once you are logged on, you can log on to 4 devices simultaneously under the same license. Again, lots of scenarios here. Hot desking, 24-hour operations. If a small taxi company probably employ 10 people to answer the phones, well, they probably have 10 phones, but they're not employing 10 people. They're probably employing, if they're open 24 hours a day, 30, 40 people. You can create users for 30 or 40 people and only have 10 logged on, so you only need a 10 user license. But now when people log on, you're reporting users, not extensions. If you want to find out what someone did last week or pull off the recording for someone, you're not asking what extension were they working at. You just put their name in and you find their information from there. So that's the core. Then we can add additional functionality. So we'll look at these and describe what the functionality is and what type of license it is. So Swyx Record, let's talk about this first. This allows the soft client to do call recording. Now, the call recording on the soft client only works if you are using USB devices. Of course, the audio has to be captured, and if you're on a SIP phone or one of our Swyx system phones, then the audio is in that piece of hardware, and how are we going to capture it? So if you're using a USB device, Swyx can record the call locally. Unlike trunk side recording, the end user can have access to this, do whatever they want. It's like an aide-memoire, and they can do it by just pressing a button. Now, this option is actually labeled an option pack. The definition of an option pack should be more described as a system feature, because what's happening here is when I enable Swyx Record, I'm enabling it for the system, so for every user. So therefore, the option pack has to have the same number of users on it as the server does. So don't get confused by this. It shouldn't really be sold as a 15 user Swyx Record, because that causes confusion. It's just Swyx Record is going to cost this much for a 15 user system. Does that make sense? Well, I hope it does. If there is a mismatch, so if I have a 15 user Swyx server but only put 5 option packs on, a 5 user, say, Swyx Record in this case, option pack, the system will be crippled to be only a 5 user system. So you must match these two. So Swyx Record, that's the first one. Second option pack is the Swyx Conference. So the Swyx Conference option pack actually does two things. It removes the 3-person limit of the standard conferencing. So out of the box, everyone can do 3-party conference calls. If you add Swyx Conference license to it, it removes that limit, and I can carry on conferencing people till it becomes unbearable or I run out of connectivity. But the Swyx option pack also allows you to create virtual conference rooms, conference bridge, some people call this. So I can build as many conference rooms as I want on the system. The conference rooms can be accessed either via a PIN number or via a CLI identification or a DDI number or Outlook access. There's lots of ways of accessing a conference room, but you can create as many of these if you got the conference license, and because it's an option pack, it has to match the number of users on the system. Then we get the ECR option pack. ECR stands for Extended Call Routing, and this gets you access to our graphical script engine, and it allows you to build very complex call routing solutions. At the simplest form, this is an IVR with a menu system. Press 1 for this, 2 for that. But once you've got the ECR, this gives you access to the core systems. We have to do deep integration into third-party products, real complex database lookups, whatever you want to do. If you want to do a solution sale, then it's ECR. But it's not a telephone system. If you want a telephone system, then it's Swyx Ware. So the Swyx Ware core license gives you telephony. The Swyx Ware ECR pack, option pack, gives you something that's a solution. And as an option pack, it must match the number of users. Then we have Swyx Mobile, our mobile app on both, as I said, iOS and Android. And this gives you a full VoIP client with a lot of system information, presence, etc., built into it. And that's not an option pack. And that's not an option pack. It's a first come, first served basis. So you buy the number of mobile licenses for the number of mobile users. And then we have Swyx Fax. This is not an option pack. It allows users to send or receive fax from the desktop. And I need a fax license for any user that wishes to do either of those. Now, in most companies, it's quite possible that there will be a large number of people that want to send faxes, but only a couple that need to receive them. whoever sends or whoever receives needs a fax license. So those are the individual licenses and option packs. We also have, to make life easier, a Swyx Professional, and this gives everything to everyone. You can't mix and match. So if you start off with Professional and you want to add another 10 users, 2 years down the line you can't add 10 users and only 10 conference. It has to be 10 users and 10 Professional. But obviously buying the Professional does work out cheaper than buying all the licenses individually, and there are price breaks that you need to look at, or sales will need to look at when they're quoting for this. So that's the product, and we've added some extra product onto that recently. Swyx CTI Plus. So out of the box, even with the standard Swyx license, you can control a system phone with the screen. If you put the CTI Plus license on, you can control any phone, and I really mean any phone, with the screen. You can even control your mobile or your home telephone, for example. So let's say I'm a home worker living in the back end of beyond. I've got terrible bandwidth. I'm using terminal services to run a virtual desktop. There's no way I can deliver voice over that connection. Absolutely no problem with CTI Plus. Run your virtual client in terminal services over a very low bandwidth and CTI it to your home telephone. And then when someone rings you internally, your home phone rings and you answer it, and you can control the call from the screen. You can make outbound calls on the screen and it will be delivered to your home phone. Perfect call quality. So CTI Plus can be used for that. It can be used to control a third party. If you don't want to use the system phones from Swyx and you have a preference for another vendor's phones, as long as they're SIP, plug them in and then use the screen to control those via the CTI Plus licenses. It's not an option pack. You only need to buy it for those that are using it. Integration into Exchange and Outlook out of the box. If they are using Lotus Notes, then there is an additional license for that, and obviously this is an option pack, so it has to match the number of core users. In the days prior to high availability and virtualization, we sold a number of systems where users wanted resilience with a hot standby server without having to replicate all the licenses. For that purpose, we have a standby option pack. So you do not need to double up the licenses. You just buy a option pack license for standby on the master server, and you can put a second server in and the system will keep the two in sync and fail them over should the master server fail. This gets used less and less these days, as VMware and high availability, or Hyper-V high availability, can achieve a very similar result, if not in some respects a better result. But the option is there. And then finally we have Swyx Monitor option pack. Swyx Monitor actually does 3 jobs. It allows call recording on the trunk. So Swyx Record, down the bottom here, Swyx Record is call recording from the client, but it has to be the soft client using USB. If you want to record any other phone device, then you need to record it on the trunk. Some organizations have to record all their trunk calls anyway, so they would use the Swyx Monitor license for that. Swyx Monitor can also be used to activate call intrusion, so those with authority can listen into other callers on the system. And when they listen in, we give 3 levels. We give a completely silent, you hid from the callers. We do a what some people call a whisper mode, or a one-way mode, where you can listen in on a call and offer advice to the internal party that the outside party can't hear. Great in that contact center environment, and you pair that up with the collaboration that's available from the soft client, and no longer do you have to have your supervisors walking around with headsets and these splitter cables to jack into the headsets and then lean over your shoulders to look at the screen. They can sit at their desk, and your team members can get in touch with you, share the screen, and you can listen to what they're saying, all very comfortably. So it does call intrusion, it does system-wide recording on the trunks, and for those that really need it, it can force the Swyx record option pack to always go on. So for example, one of our users using Swyx is a bank, and not only do they have to record all calls outside the building, they have to record all calls internally. Everyone uses Swyxit, and they need to record all those calls. They can't rely on people remembering to press the record button. So by putting the monitor option on there, you can instruct the record option pack to automatically activate. And when that happens, you can also deny the end users the ability to delete their own call recordings, so they're permanently stored. So that's the options. That's the option packs, and you have to understand the difference. So an option, the number of licenses as required. An option pack has to match the base user, and we define that again here. We go through this several times because it's really important that you understand this, and it is part of the final examination that you understand the difference between them. So that's the first part of the training over and done with. There are some other modules to do before you turn up on the course. I hope you get time to go through them, and if you've got any questions, please send an email in and we'll do our best to answer them as soon as possible. And wish you luck and wish you well, and hope to see you on one of the in-house training courses shortly. Thank you.